Southern California, where mountains meet roads, roads meet the ocean, and the ocean meets the horizon. A place where mornings can start in the snow and end watching the sunsets over the Pacific. Surfing, skating, snowboarding, motorcycles, and music. Southern California isn't just a location, it's a culture. A place where people chase ideas, creativity, and sometimes the American dream itself. And today, we're looking at a company that came straight out of that culture. A company that didn't just make watches, they made watches for surfers, skaters, snowboarders, musicians, and artists. A company that became synonymous with the coast, the streets, and the mountains of Southern California. This is the story of Nixon watches. Nixon was founded in 1997 by Andy Laats and DiNenna. At the time, the watch industry looked very different. Most watch brands were designing watches for the traditional market, dress watches, luxury watches, professional watches, but almost nobody was designing watches specifically for the action sports community. Surfers, skateboarders, snowboarders. And that is where Nixon saw the opportunity. Instead of designing watches for everyone, they designed watches for their friends, for the riders, for the artists, for the people actually living that lifestyle. From the beginning, Nixon had a very clear philosophy. They called it team designed. That meant the watches weren't just designed in an office. They were designed with input from the athletes and the creatives who wore them every day. Surfers testing them in saltwater, skaters wearing them in the streets, snowboarders taking them into the mountains, the snow. These weren't just watches inspired by action sports. They were built inside that culture. And the designs reflected that. They were bold. They were different. Sometimes they're oversized, like this 5130. Sometimes they're minimal, like the Player. But always unmistakably a Nixon. One of the most iconic models that ever come out with this philosophy was the 5130 here. A watch designed to be big, bold, and impossible to ignore. Named after its 51 millimeter case size and 300 meter water resistance, it became one of the most recognizable watches of the 2000s. Another staple was this time teller. It was clean, it was minimal, it was classic. A watch that could work on the beach or at a snow or skating downtown. And then there was the Century, blending sport and classic watch design in a way that felt uniquely Nixon. But Nixon didn't just stop with watches. They leaned deeply into culture. They collaborated with musicians like Metallica, Rolling Stones, and Nirvana, to name a few. They collaborated with artists such as Hannah Eddy, Steve Harrington, to name a few as well. They also collaborated with athletes as far as their sponsorships go. Sponsored athletes that would become legends in their sports. Athletes like Paul Rodriguez, Danny Way, Rodney Mullen, Tony Hawk, just to name a few. Nixon once created watch straps made from leather jackets donated by musicians and celebrities, with proceeds supporting music care. Now, some of these celebrities consist of Keith Richards, Ozzy Osbourne, James Hetfield from Metallica, Ringo Starr, Slash, even Justin Timberlake, to name a few. They also created watches using pieces of skateboard decks from professional riders, with the funds going towards building skate parks for the youth. It wasn't just branding. It was participation in the culture that built the brand. In 2006, Nixon was acquired by Billabong International as the brand continued to grow globally. But by 2012, Nixon became independent again through a partnership between Tri-Atlantic Capital Partners and management. Despite the changes behind the scenes, the identity of Nixon largely stayed the same. A brand rooted in creativity, sports, and Southern California culture. Nixon never tried to compete directly with traditional watch brands. They weren't chasing Swiss prestige. They were chasing style, culture, and identity. Their watches became accessories that represented something bigger than just timekeeping. For a lot of people, including myself, a Nixon watch wasn't just a watch. It was part of a lifestyle that we did every day. I myself grew up in that culture, surfing, skateboarding, snowboarding. I grew up around the coast. I grew up in the water. Nixon was synonymous with that culture, and that's how I became familiar with them, and that's how I fell in love with their watches. I have a few myself, and for many of us, that's exactly how we discovered Nixon. Not through watch collecting, but through surf shops, skate shops, music, and friends. Nixon proved something interesting. You don't need centuries of horological history to create a meaningful watch brand. Now, it might not be a luxury brand. It might not be a collector to some people, but it's a collector to many within that culture. And that's where watches like this one come in. You guys, thank you for stopping by and watching. If you guys are new here, I hope you enjoyed it. Please hit the like, subscribe button, hit that bell, and we will see you guys on the next one. Thank you.